Hi guys, how are you today? Welcome back to my channel Adventures in America. If you are new to my channel, my name is Jocelyn. The US will impose a new travel ban starting November 29 against 8 countries as part of a global effort to stem the spread of the heavily mutated Omicron variant of COVID-19. Now, there are actually 8 countries included in the travel ban starting November 29. Please take note that you will be barred entry if coming from these countries in the last 14 days. However, there are certain exceptions: U.S. citizens and permanent residents and certain family members of U.S. citizens. Now, there is a new policy regarding mask requirements being issued by the U.S. Transportation Security Administration or TSA. The U.S. Transportation Security Administration issued an emergency amendment which requires wearing of masks in and on airports, on commercial aircrafts, and in various modes of surface transportation to reduce the spread of virus due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The requirement is applicable to all passengers on board a commercial aircraft. Now, I'm going to discuss the specific type of masks that are allowed. First, masks can be either be manufactured or homemade and should be a solid piece of material without slits, exhalation valves, or punctures. However, there are certain categories of persons exempt from wearing a mask. First, children under the age of 2. Second, people of disabilities who cannot wear a mask or cannot safely wear a mask because of the disability as defined by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Third, people for whom wearing a mask would create a risk to workplace health, safety, or job duty as determined by the relevant workplace safety guidelines or federal regulations. Non-citizens or non-immigrants and seeking to enter the U.S. are required to show proof of being fully vaccinated before flight to the U.S. Otherwise, you will be denied entry or denied boarding. Here are the entry requirements for foreign nationals or non-citizens. First, proof of full vaccination. Second, you must have a pre-departure negative coronavirus test within 3 days of flying. There are certain requirements for each of these 2 requirements. All foreign travelers must provide official vaccination documentation, and airlines will confirm that the last dose was at least 2 weeks prior to the travel date. There are also specific information regarding official documentation. First, the personal identifiers such as your name or date of birth must match the personal identifiers on the travel documents. You must also name the official source and the vaccine manufacturer and the date of vaccination. You must also prove that you are fully vaccinated depending on the type of vaccine that you received, whether it is a single dose or a 2-dose series of vaccine. Also, if you received mixed vaccines, you will also be considered fully vaccinated. If not, you will be denied boarding. Now, how the 14 days are calculated. Your last dose must have been given a full 14 days before the day you board your flight to the U.S. The vaccines must be approved either by the U.S. FDA or by the World Health Organization for emergency use. Here are the approved vaccines by the U.S. FDA: Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna. Now, here are the approved vaccines for emergency use by the World Health Organization: Pfizer or BioNTech, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Covaxin, Covishield, Sinopharm, and Sinovac. The newly approved is Covaxin. Because there are countries around the world who administered mix and match vaccines, it will also be acceptable and you will also be considered as fully vaccinated by the CDC. Now, which vaccines are not accepted in the US? First is Sputnik 5. Second, Novavax. And third, Abdala. And fourth, Soberana. These are the not approved vaccines in the US. Now, let's talk about the proof of vaccination that you can present when traveling to the US. There are several options or acceptable documents that you can present when boarding. Now, here are the list of acceptable proof of vaccination. You can present a verifiable record such as a digital or paper. As an example, you can present a certificate of vaccination with a digital QR code. Some examples are those issued by the United Kingdom or European Union. You can also present non-verifiable paper records such as a printout of COVID-19 vaccination record. Another proof of vaccination that you can present is unverifiable digital records. As an example, you can present digital copies of vaccination record or downloaded vaccine record or vaccine certificate from an official source. The second requirement is that you must present a pre-departure negative coronavirus test within 3 days of flying. It must be a viral test, an antigen or RT-PCR test. There are specific requirements. Those who are exempted from this test are 2 years old and below. So all passengers 2 years old and above must have a negative coronavirus test within 3 days of flying, and the negative viral test must be approved or authorized by the national authority. There are also specific requirements regarding the documentation. Immigrants to the U.S. who are already green card holders are not required to get vaccinated. However, if you are applying to enter the U.S. as immigrant, you are required to have a medical examination that includes a COVID-19 vaccination before issued an immigrant visa. Now, here are the exceptions for COVID vaccines for all non-citizens or non-immigrants. Individuals are persons on diplomatic or official foreign government travel. Also, children under 18 years of age. Also, persons with medical contraindications to COVID-19 vaccine. In addition, participants in certain COVID-19 vaccine trials, persons issued a humanitarian or emergency exception, also persons with valid visas except B1, B2 who are citizens of foreign country with limited COVID-19 vaccination. Also members of the U.S. Armed Forces or their spouse or children under 18 years of age. In addition, sea crew members traveling with a C1 and D non-immigrant visa, and persons whose entry would be in the national interest as determined by the Secretary of State or Secretary of Transportation. Now, if you fall under any of these exceptions, you will be required to attest that you are exempted from the requirement to present proof of being fully vaccinated against COVID-19. As a requirement, you will be tested with a viral test 3 to 5 days after arrival, and you will also self-quarantine for a full 7 days, and you will also self-isolate if you test positive. Even if you're exempted but you plan to stay in the U.S. for more than 60 days, you will have to attest that you will arrange to become fully vaccinated within 60 days of arriving in the U.S. or when medically appropriate unless you are too young for the vaccine. Also, for all U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents, children under 2 years old do not need to be tested, and there are also accommodations for people who have documented recovery from COVID-19. Now, here are the requirements for unvaccinated U.S. citizens, U.S. nationals, and U.S. lawful permanent residents and immigrants. If you are unvaccinated, there is only one requirement. You must have a negative COVID test within 1 day of flying. So I'm going to repeat for those who are unvaccinated, U.S. citizens, and lawful permanent residents. You must have a negative COVID test result taken no more than 1 day before travel or before flying to the U.S. Now, I have to repeat this requirement for all vaccinated U.S. citizens and U.S. lawful permanent residents. Starting November 8, if you are vaccinated, you will need proof of full vaccination and a negative COVID test within 3 days of flying. In addition, masking will still be required when flying to the US, but those who are fully vaccinated, there is no quarantine. For those exempted from COVID-19 vaccine, non-tourist travelers from 50 countries with nationwide vaccination rates of 10% are exempted. If you are traveling to the US and staying for more than 60 days, you will have to be vaccinated. I'm going to repeat, unvaccinated Americans do not need to be fully vaccinated to board international flights to the US. Also, the only requirement is that you must have a negative COVID test within 1 day of flying. And this is also applicable for lawful permanent residents or green card holders. Also, there are no religious exemptions for international travelers to avoid COVID-19 requirements based on the CDC website. In addition, unvaccinated Americans, including permanent residents receiving exemptions, medical exemptions, will need to provide proof of negative COVID test within 1 day of departing. Because of the new travel system, airlines will collect personal information, including a phone number and an email from all US-bound passengers for contact tracing. Now, here are the rules for all passengers arriving by land from Mexico and Canada starting November 8th. Now, here are the requirements after arrival to the US. For those vaccinated, there is no quarantine required after arrival. However, all travelers are recommended to get tested within 3 to 5 days after arrival in the US. Now, for those unvaccinated, all travelers are recommended to get tested and, in addition, stay home for full 7 days. All passengers to the US are required to fill out the customs declaration from the airline. In addition, please submit or fill out the latest version of the CDC Attestation Form. Please also submit or fill out the US Traveler Health Declaration Form, which will be supplied by airline personnel. For allowed and prohibited items, please consult the TSA website. You can also enroll for TSA pre-check for a faster screening process to the US. There is an advisory for US citizens with an expired passport. You can now travel back to the US with an expired passport until December 31st, 2021. However, there are specific requirements. US citizens will be able to use their expired US passports to return to the US through December 31st. US citizens who are overseas, whose passport expired on or after January 1st, 2020, may be able to use their expired US passport for direct return travel to the US. However, if you have an expired passport, you cannot travel to any foreign country, destination, or territory. There are specific requirements that you must meet in order to avail of this special privilege for U.S. citizens with an expired passport. First, you are a U.S. citizen. Second, you are currently abroad, seeking to return to the U.S. And third, they are flying, or the U.S. citizen must be flying directly to the U.S. or a U.S. territory, or only have a short-term transit through a foreign country on their return to the U.S. or to a U.S. territory. And the original or expired passport was valid for 10 years, or if they were 15 years of age or under when the passport was issued, their expired passport was originally valid for 5 years. Also, the expired passport must be in an undamaged and in their possession. Also, it has been announced that there will be a next generation US passport. So what does it mean? The United States has begun to issue the next generation US passport. Passports are distinguished by the color of the passport cover as well as annotations. All other security features remain the same throughout all types of passport book. So that means if you have a previously issued US passport, it is still valid until the expiration date. Also, there is now a new requirement for immigrants to have a COVID-19 vaccine starting October 1st, but you must wait for your medical examination before getting any COVID vaccine. And for those intending immigrants or have been issued an immigrant visa, either you must have the COVID-19 vaccine, or if you are going to adjust your status in the US, you must have the COVID-19 vaccine during your medical exam after October 1st. I actually have a full video regarding the COVID-19 vaccine for immigrants to the US. I'll recommend that you check it out if you have any other questions. Again, thank you guys for tuning into my channel, and if you have any other questions or comments, please post them down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. I always welcome new subscribers. I hope everyone is staying safe, and I'll see you in my next video.